Hello, everybody. I'm back again, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Shan Foster. Shan is an expert in diversity, and Shan has recently spoke to my Vistage group, and it was powerful, Shan. I actually had people at the end of the meeting coming up to me, moved like they have not been moved by other speakers. As you saw, I even had a member that teared up during the meeting, and I had another member tear up after the meeting for positive reasons. So you had a powerful presentation. But for the people that are joining us today, maybe you could start out and tell us a little bit about what your mission is and what you can share about culture.
Well, thank you so much for that feedback, and certainly enjoyed the opportunity to share our work with your members. Um, Fostering Healthy Solutions is our company, and we focus primarily on providing healthy solutions to diversity, equity, and inclusion through execution, through training, and through strategic planning. And it's so important to ensure that there's a strategy connected to our work. We can have good intentions all day long, but we gotta have a strategy to get to the place where we want to be that is informed by data. And so everything that we do starts with discovery. And it's so critical to be able to do that because we don't know where our blind spots are. We don't know what's missing. We don't know oftentimes the way in which our leaders are going about making decisions. It's critical to be able to start from that place of discovery and allow the information and data that we receive to formulate our strategic plan. And then from there, it's just about execution. So that's what we're doing with clients across the country, making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just a checkbox. And we're not just solely doing this because it's the right thing to do. It's also the business thing to do. And that's how we get to see those sustainable outcomes, by being intentional, being impactful, and prioritizing people.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was interesting in your speech to our group was you're pushing us to measure everything that we do around this topic. And you had actually asked a lot of very straightforward questions about, are we measuring this and measuring that? What are the types of things that executives should be measuring that will ultimately be to their benefit?
Well, we should be measuring where we look for talent and what has that historically produced in relation to what we want it to produce, and where are the gaps. Oftentimes when it comes to hiring, we hear things in the workplace like, we just hire the best person for the job. And what we really mean by that is we hire the best person based on the talent pool that we tapped into. That's not always the best person for the job. We also have to make sure that we're measuring what does it actually take in order for the job to be done well, effectively, and reach the desired outcomes. But what are those things that have historically been a part of those job descriptions that have nothing to do with the outcomes? It's just there because it's always been there. You know, in business, we hear the other phrase very commonly: this is the way that we've always done it, when it may not be serving us well today. So we got to be able to measure those things related to our human resources. But we also have to take a step back and measure the impact that our leaders are having on our workforce. So that means performance reviews have to go both ways. We got to be able to get data related to the expectations that we have for our leaders and ensure that we're equipping them with the necessary tools and resources and skill sets to be effective people managers, not just because we like them, not just because they do a great job adding to our bottom line, but also because they're making their teams better, that people are growing and truly reaching their potential. That's something that has to be measured, and it has to be intentional. We get what we inspect, not what we expect. We can have high expectations all day long, but if we're not measuring that impact, then we don't know whether that impact is being realized by everyone on our team or not. And then, of course, we also have to make sure that we're measuring the financial benefit from the initiatives that we're putting in place. There is tremendous value that we leave on the table by not being intentional about diversity. When you have a diverse team, the data says that more diverse teams produce better outcomes. So we have to be intentional about ensuring that we have a level of culture and inclusion that truly ignites that potential that comes from diversity, such that we see those outcomes in our bottom line. And so we have to measure that in order to be able to pivot in areas where we need to pivot, to be intentional in the areas where we need to be intentional, and also to put things in place that historically have not been there related to how we measure. So all of those things become really, really critical to ensuring that we reach sustainable outcomes.
Absolutely. So when you've done a lot of consulting over time around this issue, and do you have any stories that you can share with us where diversity had some maybe unintended positive impacts on an organization that they weren't planning on?
Oh goodness, there are plenty. One that gets used often is the company that utilized sensors to be able to turn on faucets in our restrooms. And that company used a subset of the population in order to test their product. Because that company was not very intentional about diversity, they did not realize that people with darker skin were not able to trigger the sensor the way that people with lighter skin did, solely because we didn't take into consideration that we are all different. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Once they were able to add diversity to their team, they were able to solve that problem very, very quickly and ensure that their product was user friendly for all and not just some. That changes our profitability when we're able to market what we do to a larger demographic of people. That's an example that gets used all the time. The same is true for solutions. Many businesses have diversified their executive teams and thus been able to not only add products and goods and services to their offering, but also solutions for their teams. When you're able to draw upon the experiences of people with different backgrounds, different education levels, people who have had different lived experiences, their ability to relate and connect with our employees in a way that is effective is really, really high. Because we need that relatability. We need high levels of empathy. We also need psychological safety, which is a priority in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when we're able to build diverse teams, now the responsibility of knowing all things and creating that safe environment doesn't just rest on the shoulders of any one group of people. We can do it together the way that it was intended. And so there are all kinds of stories of success, people who have been intentional about diversity, but also intentional about inclusion.
Jane, if I'm part of an organization that is come up short with diversity, how do I go about attracting new talent? What are the sources? Where might I go to help speed up developing a diverse workforce?
Well, the most unpopular answer is we got to live diverse lives. When we live a diverse life, we open ourselves up to diverse talent in ways that just going and trying to do it performance based just doesn't. This is about relationship. So in order for us to have access to historical Black colleges and universities, to places of worship, to salons and barber shops, to community organizations, we have to build relationship in order to gain access to those spaces for the purpose of diversifying our workforce. the days of being able to count on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and even search firms to an extent are just not producing the kind of diversity that actually impacts the workplace in a way that we would hope. And so we got to be more organic. We have to do it personally so that it can have an exponential benefit to us professionally. That's the key thing that's missing. When we build relationships, we gain a level of access that we didn't have before. You know, when I think about my own company, as we continue to grow, and it's intentional about us being diverse, it's not hard for me to recruit diversity because I live a diverse life. I'm connected to organizations and groups and people from all different walks of life. So when I send out that email to my network to say, hey, I got a position open, would love for you to send somebody my way, I'm attracting diversity because I live a very diverse life. I think it's also important to consider all of your communications, both internal and external, looking at our websites, looking at the language we use to promote positions, ensuring that we're putting those job descriptions in the right places that attract diversity. But it has to come from a place of relationship so that it's not performative, but it's just who we are as a business.
That makes sense. Shane, can you possibly tell us a story about how diversity has touched your life in a personal way?
Diversity has really been the story of my life, and it started with my experience at Vanderbilt University. I grew up in New Orleans during a time when New Orleans was the murder capital of the world, but I grew up in a neighborhood where most people looked like me. And then I go to Vanderbilt University where most people did not look like me, and we all had our preconceived notions. We all brought with us our biases, but it was a safe space to really learn, to grow, to explore, to be courageous and ask questions. And it was in that space that I was able to gain an appreciation for the experiences of others, things that really added so much value, not only to my life, but also to my experiences. A fun way that it added value was I got to ride jet skis. We didn't have jet skis in New Orleans. It was not a thing. I now like hockey. We still don't have hockey in New Orleans. So those are some of the fun ways that it's been able to add to my life. But also in a practical sense, in my business, it's also added value. We were able to sponsor sensory rooms at Vanderbilt University that are making sure that people who have sensory needs have a place to go so that they don't have to leave the arena or leave the football field, and they can enjoy the game and excitement. And I did that partnering with someone who is Middle Eastern, right? Building relationship. We did some work around gender-based violence and built a curriculum that was primarily for the faith-based communities, and we were able to put that curriculum in pilot in Muslim communities because of relationship. So now we have a curriculum that is not only for those who have a Christian faith, but those who have Muslim faith, those who have a Hinduism faith, and so forth and so on. So I think it's really about making sure that we embrace people, and it opens up possibilities for us to be able to be so much more effective and impactful, and it directly impacts our bottom line.
Very good. One last question for you. Don't know if this one's going to come out of left field, but who were your heroes and mentors on your journey? Who made the biggest impact on you and this journey with diversity?
The person that made the biggest impact on my life for diversity was a guy by the name of David Williams. David was the athletic director at Vanderbilt. It's the first African American athletic director in the Southeastern Conference. And David lived diversity every single day. He was so intentional about the overall experience and exposure of our student athletes and ensuring that he created opportunities for athletes to travel, for people, for our students to travel and to see the world and to gain a global perspective, and to be able to understand that we live in a very diverse world. And in order for us to truly be successful and impactful, we have to be able to embrace the experiences of not only ourselves, but of others, and see people as valuable. That was something that David not only talked about on a regular basis, but he lived it by making sure that he created opportunities for others. Candace Story Lee, who is Dr. Candace Story Lee, who is now currently the athletic director at Vanderbilt, talks about all the time how she was directly mentored by David. And everything that she knows was because David took the time to invite her into spaces that she wasn't otherwise invited into, to be able to mentor her and give her a safe place to figure things out and to fail, without ridicule and fear of retaliation. It's so now we have literally the first African American female athletic director in a Power Five conference in the United States because of that mentorship. And so it David lives it. The partnerships that we're able to bridge between various communities in Nashville, it all came from his heart. And so I learned that from David Williams during my time in college. And then also, I would say a guy by the name of Rashid Fakrudin, who is the former president of the Islamic Center in Nashville, is a great friend of mine and powerful leader in this community. He just values people, no matter who they are, how they identify. He leads with love and is such an effective leader in this community and galvanizes people for the purpose of social change. And I get a chance to do life alongside him and to do work alongside him and to see firsthand what it means to truly live diversity, equity, and inclusion. So those are some people that I would think of.
Great examples, and it just takes somebody to make a spark, and it affects so many other people along the way. Like I think you have, Shane. Now people are going to be watching this, and they're going to want to know how to get a hold of you. Is there some contact information you can share, so people could reach out to you in case they want to hear you speak or learn more about your message?
Absolutely. Please go to my website, fosteringhealthysolutions.com. If you want to book me as a speaker, you can go to shanefoster.com. There's plenty of content and ways to get in touch with me there. I'm also on all social media platforms, LinkedIn. My name is spelled Shane without the E. So ShanFoster for Foster as my last name. So I look forward to engaging with you all.
Well, Shane, thanks again for your time. It really meant a lot for our group, for what you've done and how you've inspired them. And so I'm wishing you best along your journey and sharing your time with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. All the best.